thousand to, you know, 20,000.
But she-
And then that helps.
Yeah. I guess so.
Go ahead.
It's probably doing that because she probably started. the meeting.
I'm just now starting it.
It's the same.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before I ask the city clerk to call the roll, I'll mention that Councilor Julie Wolf had asked to be excused. Her daughter's getting married. So with that, if you'll call the roll, please, Judy.
City councilors: Judith Chandler. Present. John Shada.
Here.
Natalie Johnson.
Here.
Steve Brimner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Present.
And Mayor John Graham.
Present, and that's a record. It's the first time we've had 6 members of council in the same room in over a year. So we're making progress. Okay. Right, the next item is approval of the agenda. I believe everyone's had a chance to see the agenda. If there are no corrections, I would entertain a motion to adopt it.
I'll move that we approve the agenda as written. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. On we go. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. And I know we have at least one individual who wants to address council tonight. Standing by. Good evening.
So, Mayor?
Before we start with the public comments on non-scheduled items, I would first ask that each speaker introduce themselves and give their full name and address. And if comments could be kept to 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. And we typically do not respond to comments that are made during this portion of the meeting, but if we have your contact information, we can get back to you. So if you would provide that to the city clerk, that would be appreciated. Okay. I believe Mr. Kelly, you're up, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Graham and members of the council. As you know, I imagine you probably received my email about the recent episode involving an attack in the Briarhurst parking lot, knife attack, and subsequent vandalism, supposedly by a homeless individual against a Manitou resident. You already know everything that you need to know about that, I'm sure, and if you don't, I'm sure you can find out from Chief Otto, or he'd be more than happy to explain it to you. The reason why I came today is just to offer a perspective and some information that I'd like you to consider. I was a train dispatcher for the Union Pacific Railroad, which means I worked at one time for Phil Anschutz. Part of my job as being a train dispatcher involved making sure catastrophes didn't happen. You know, it means washouts, derailments, any number of things, and to make sure that the railroad was run smoothly and safely. And I did that. But the reason why I mention that is because I'm seeing a situation develop here in Manitou Springs and El Paso County and in Colorado in general, but especially here in Manitou. I want to bring it to your attention. And that is not only the potential for violence and the safety implications for our quality of life here in Manitou with this current situation, because it's happened before. We've had a gentleman that was stabbed in the neck and paralyzed for life, brain damage, when he tried to feed the homeless in a city park. We've had, last October, we had possibly an arson set afire to the slopes above the Cog Railroad. Back in 2007, we had another wildfire at a homeless camp that destroyed 80 acres, but happily and luckily, the wind conditions in both of those fires were such that nothing worse happened. At the same time last year, if you remember, and it's in this handout that I gave you, I'd really appreciate it if you'd look at it at your convenience. the same time last summer, in 2020 alone, Colorado experienced its 3 worst wildfires ever. All 3 eclipsed the Hayman fire of 2012. All 3 were over 200,000 acres, and the smallest of the 3 was 7.5 times larger than the Waldo Canyon fire. As you remember, myself and probably everybody here was evacuated in the dead of night because of the Waldo Canyon fire. Now the problem is this, is if we continue to have the homeless camping up on the mountain the way they've been doing for the last several years, and totally disregarding the fire conditions, totally disregarding the U.S. Forest Service prohibitions against burning fire, our luck is going to run out. We're going to have a major wildfire on Pikes Peak above Manitou Springs. And depending on the direction that fire is blowing, it can take all of Pikes Peak or it can take Manitou Springs. And if it does either, this town will be devastated for years, if not decades to come. It'll have implications, it'll have catastrophic effects on our economy, on our quality of life. We'll have flash floods that will be biblical in comparison to the Waldo Canyon flash floods. We need you. When I say we, I mean the people of Manitou Springs need you to get this situation under control. I know you don't want to ride the homeless out of town on a rail, but we need the hills above Manitou Springs to be clear of these camps, and we need the town of Manitou Springs to be safe for people to walk. I have a pint of bear spray I brought with me because I have to walk past the Briar Springs parking lot. If there's any campers there, 2 of them have already threatened the people that were assaulted already in retribution for their friend being attacked or being arrested. If they find out that I'm in here talking to you publicly, urging you to take strong, decisive action against the homeless situation in Manitou Springs, I'm going to be in trouble. Yes, sir.
We need you to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. I think
good.
you're a little over, so if you could wrap it up, we appreciate
That's
this, but
totally
please.
it. I appreciate your attention and your consideration, and I apologize if I was too long-winded.
Oh, no, that's okay. We appreciate your coming down and speaking
Does
with us.
anybody have any questions?
We typically don't respond at this point.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you. No, we appreciate your interest and your concerns. Thank you. Let's see, Judy, do we have anyone in the audience, the Zoom audience?
I do see a hand that's raised from Mike Casey.
All right, let's go ahead and bring Mike over. Good evening, Mr. Casey.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you have the floor, and if you would give us your full name, of course, and address, and then if you limit your comments to about 3 minutes, Mike, that'd be
Sure,
great.
will do.
Thank
My
you.
name is Mike Casey. I live at 315 Crystal Hills Boulevard. And I need your help. I want to talk about the rain yesterday and what happens in a deluge like this. Water comes flying down Pawnee and it goes west. And my office is the lowest part of Manitou Avenue. And there's a storm drain there, and it has a long history of clogging. And this is the lake that was in front of my office last night. It's stunning. And I've cleaned that drain about 20 times in the last 10 years. And I don't mind doing it, but I'm afraid of when I'm not around. So my hope tonight is you guys can contact whoever and get the word out to the guys that actually do the work and get that on their list. When there's a rain, that drain has got to be maintained. It's dangerous. This is the all the water that was in my office this morning, and in 2018, this is a report from FEMA that it was $49,000 worth of damage that went into my building. And all it takes is 90 seconds to clean that drain. So again, my request is that if you can just get the word out and get some communication back to me so that I know I'm heard. I've talked to this a lot of people about this issue. It's been going on for years and years and years. And I just think the lowest grain on Manitou Avenue should be a priority when there's a major rain. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. We'll take that under advisement and pass word along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who wants to speak for non-agenda items tonight? I don't see any hands up in the attendees list, and we don't have anyone here in City Hall wanting to do so. So let's go ahead and go on with the next item. It'll be item F, the consent calendar. We have 3 items tonight. First is approval of the May 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. The second is approval of the May 11th special meeting minutes. And the third item is reappointment of Julia Simmons as a regular member of the City Planning Commission. If there are no objections, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the consent calendar as written.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Item G, we have 2 proclamations tonight. It seems like May is Proclamation Month. The first is Proclamation of Historic Preservation Month. The second is Proclamation of the 61st National Public Works Week. So if you'll bear with me, I'll read these. City of Manitou Springs Proclamation number 0421, Archaeology and Historic Preservation Month, May 2021. Whereas the month of May is celebrated nationally as Archaeology and National Preservation Month, and whereas Manitou Springs is invested in the natural and historic environments found in and around the city, and whereas Manitou Springs' 3 national registered districts, 10 individually listed National Register sites, and many, many places within our local historic preservation district matter to our citizens and visitors, and whereas it is important to celebrate the city's natural and built environments and the contributions made by dedicated citizens in preserving our surroundings, which gives that community its unique sense of place and identity. Now we, the Manitou Springs City Council, hereby proclaim that May 2021 shall be observed in the city of Manitou Springs as Archaeology and Historic Preservation Month. Manitou Springs citizens are called upon to take the following actions. Hike our local trails with family and friends, enjoying the beautiful scenery and views of our community that have been largely unchanged for 100+ years. Discuss the history of Manitou Springs' first residents, the Mountain Ute tribe, and the other Native American tribes historically found in this area. Walk with family and friends within the city, looking for heritage plants brought in by early settlers, such as lilacs found to be well suited to our environment, and at the historic homes, downtown buildings, and mineral springs to experience and learn more about the community they live in. Appreciate our historic sites and environment and the people who work to preserve them so that they are here for all of us to experience and enjoy. Recognize historic preservation as a core community value that provides both a tangible benefit to the local economy and a richness of spirit to the city of Manitou Springs. Join the city of Manitou Springs in celebrating the month of May as Archaeology and Historic Preservation Month, dated this 18th day of May, 2021. Thank you. And then we have proclamation number 0521. It's the 61st National Public Works Week proclamation, May 16 to 22, 2021. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Manitou Springs, and whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Manitou Springs to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved, I, John Graham, Mayor of the City of Manitou Springs, do hereby designate the week May 16 through 22, 2021 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Adopted this 18th day of May 2021 in the city of Manitou Springs, El Paso County, Colorado. Thank you. Okay, that said, we can get on to other business. The first item is appointment of Luke Harper Prince as a regular member of the Transportation and Parking Board. And I think normally we'd have Mr. Cheney introduce this item. Denise, do you want to bring it up? Or?
Sure. Sorry, Roy is out ill today, so I can go
Kevin?
ahead and bring it up.
Kevin Stevenson is on
Oh,
as
okay,
well.
great. Thank
And
you.
And I did bring Luke Harper Prince over. I can bring Kevin over right now.
Okay, if you'd bring Kevin over, please. Well, Mr. Prince?
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Certainly. And we're just waiting for Mr. Stevenson to come over. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
Council.
Thank you. Kevin, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce this item, this is the appointment of Luke Harper Prince as a regular member of the Transportation and Parking Board.
Yes, Mr. Prince has attended 2 of our previous Transportation Parking Board meetings, submitted his letter of interest, and he has the support of staff and a letter of recommendation from the current chair, Bill Kerner.
Thank you. Mr. Prince, would you like to make a brief statement expressing your interest in this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Born and raised in Manitou Springs, I'm happy to return home. I've been in Durango for 10 years. There I went to Fort Lewis College, worked on the railroad down there, and was presented an opportunity to work at the railway here in my hometown. So it's an opportunity it just presented itself, and I'm happy to return and to be involved in this community. When I was in Durango, I won an award in the Durango community called Young Professional of the Year. And that's something I'm extremely proud of. And I'd love to be involved in Manitou also. You know, it's like I said, it's my hometown. It's folks ask, well, which is your favorite? And you can't say bad about your hometown, right? My goal is to only improve it. And working here at the Cog Railway, it leads to some insight for this parking situation. And I think that my comments, of course, are only going to be beneficial, if only to recommend to the board different aspects of what I see going on. And I hope to do that in a professional and courteous manner. I'm an avid incline hiker, you know, and I think that I see what's going on with the incline folks. I'm involved in a few Facebook groups for the incline community. And so I think that they're saying this parking situation should be held also. And there's a lot of stakeholders. I live right at the top of Ruxton, which is a convenient commute for me to work. But being a resident of Ruxton corridor, hiking the incline a lot, and then of course working at the Cog Railway, I couldn't think of a better stakeholder than myself to be part of the part of the Transportation and Parking Board, at least to give some insight to what I see from all those aspects. And if accepted to this board, I promise that I'd do my due diligence to research and act accordingly. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. And at this point, I think it's good to turn over to counselors for any questions they have of either Mr. Prince or Mr. Stevenson. Do any counselors have questions or comments? Apparently not. It looks pretty straightforward. Would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we appoint Luke Harper Prince to the Transportation and Parking Board. And I do have one question or comment, Luke, and that is, you are aware that you would have to recuse yourself on COG issues. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. And I miss your beard. I liked your beard in your picture.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. We have
Thank
a
you.
motion. Do we have a
Second.
we have seconded by Natalie? Okay. Any further discussion? No? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Let's see. Judith, I'm sorry, we lost Judith. I'm sorry, Judith, how do you vote? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. And for the record, we're having a technical difficulty here, but Counselor Chandler indicated aye, so motion passes unanimously. Great, well, thank you, Luke. Welcome to the work world. Mr. Prince, thank you. Thank you also. Take care. And the next item is consideration of approval of staff writing a letter of financial commitment for the 2021 Forest Restoration and Wildfire Risk Mitigation State Grant Program, Ute Pass Corridor Water Resource and Community Protection Project. Okay, we're going to have Becca Davis for that. We need to bring her over, so if you could all just stand by for a minute.
Mayor, could we take just a 5-minute break so we can get Judith up and going, and we're going to change some computers around? Would that be okay?
Understood, yeah. So for everyone in TV land, we're going to take a 5-minute break to work a couple technical issues. So let's plan on coming back. Actually, let's figure 6:30. That's a little more than 5 minutes, so 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
We had just brought Becca Davis over to speak regarding the, I want to call it the reservoir funding, but Becca, why don't you go ahead and explain it in detail, please?
Sure. Now, Karen Berchtold and John Frissett are the real movers and shakers behind this particular grant, but I'll go ahead and introduce it. And then if you guys have any questions, they are in the attendees and they would be able to answer them more thoroughly than I. But so Manitou has the opportunity to apply for a state grant that we've never applied for before. And this is a really long name. The 2021 Forest Restoration and Wildfire Risk Mitigation State Grant Program, Ute Pass Corridor Water Resource and Community Protection Project. And it's a really wonderful opportunity for the city. It does require a letter of financial commitment for the match to the state grant, but it's for wildfire mitigation around the reservoir for 3 years, 2022 through 2024. And it is something that is really, really needed. We have an account line that we can pull this grant match from, which is great. It's the watershed maintenance account line. And every year we budget like 25,000 in there. And then like the past 2 years, we've spent like nothing from it because we just haven't had the opportunities to use that money. And then it just folds back into the water fund, reserve. But for the next 3 years, we could just make sure we budget not 25,000, but 32,500. That covers that match. We get 22,000 from the state, and we can do a lot of good work with it. Does anyone have any questions about this grant? Because then I'd want to pull over the experts.
Do any counselors have questions for Becca? Mayor Pro Tem, you have your hand up.
Thanks. This sounds like a wonderful opportunity to those guys who found it and are applying for it. My comment is that in the past, when I don't know if it was CUS, the Coalition for Upper South Platte, or who did it, but there was some clear cutting in the name of fire prevention. I can't remember. It was different from fire mitigation, but this is specifically for fire mitigation. So I would just suggest that maybe you coordinate with OSAC, because they've had a lot of experience with fire mitigation, so that we preserve we don't just do clear cutting necessarily unless it's really, really, really required. So that's my only comment, just being a little cautious with the manner in which it ends up being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Other counselors have comments or questions? Becca, perhaps we should, would you recommend bringing over Chief Forsett or Karen Berkhold for questions, or? Let me put it this way. I see Chief Forsett is in the attendees list, and also Karen. If either of you would like to address council, please use the show hand feature and we'll bring you over and you can speak to council. Okay, let's bring Karen over, please, and Chief Forsett. Great.
Good evening, Mayor Graham and council members. And I'm glad Chief Forsett is also here this evening. He had actually really initiated our concern about planning for mitigation around our reservoir. We really started talking about this, I think, last summer, and convened what we call our hazard mitigation planning team in December, and they really supported the idea of prioritizing our wildfire mitigation efforts for our reservoir. And then in February, Chief Forsett convened a group of UPath stakeholders, and we learned a whole lot more about grant opportunities and all of the many efforts going on in our region. And so Chief Forsett asked Christine Lowenberg, our planning director, and I to keep an eye out for grants and really try to get things rolling. And so this opportunity came up. It is a very major effort in our state, in that it's funded to $6 million this year, where typically it's only funded to about $1 million. So our state legislators really are really upping the game for our communities. We know we do have much higher drought risk, and that our forests are really evolved to need fire for their health, but because we've imposed our community assets on them, we continue to reduce fires and really prevent that regeneration that fires provide to our forests. So they are getting very dense. We do know we need to do some broad planning around our reservoir, but we do have this city land adjacent to our reservoir, and so we met with the Colorado State Forest Service foresters, and as well as Michelle Connolly, forester with Coalition for the Upper South Platte, and assessed this area. And they saw some potential there to do some mitigation that would also connect strategically with some other mitigation done by CSU to the south. And so we are proposing mitigation of about 40 acres. And I did get to chat with Michelle this afternoon and learned a little bit more about their approach, which is to not clear cut, but to thin out the forests in flatter areas. They can use equipment. In more sensitive areas, they will do handwork. They follow scientific principles based on Colorado State Forest Service best practices. So they're scientifically supported to allow the forest to regenerate. They are very attentive to habitat areas and will be very careful about that. And also, because this is our watershed, attentive to not causing erosion in the area. And so we were particularly excited about this because we do have a capacity issue. We're not wildfire experts. And so the way they set this grant up in our region was to partner with CUSP and Colorado State Forest Service. So CUSP is pulling together the application and will also prepare the contract and provide technical oversight and certify that the work was done properly. So it seems like a really advantageous setup for our small community.
Thank you, Karen. Very nice. Chief Forsett, do you have comments for us, sir?
Can't hear you.
John, we still show you as being muted.
I thought Judy had control, my fault.
Hear
Yeah,
you now.
I won't keep you. I think that Karen did a great job of describing what was going on up there. I think it's more importantly, it's a really good opportunity for us to show some initiative and get out of the silo that we've always been in and to work much greater in partnership with the rest of the folks up there on that hill, State Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, et cetera. The particular property that we're looking at doing that is owned by the city of Manitou is it's a great opportunity where the forest can be thinned and feed right into an area of forest that already does have some defensible space within it. It'll slow a fire, especially ground fires, and keep it from going up into the crowns with the work that they do. So it is a great opportunity. I think more importantly, what I want to say is what a great job Karen and Christine and those folks in planning have done as far as working with our new partners. And I really mean that, our new partners. We've made a lot of friends with all of the stakeholders up there on the hill. So that's going to take us a long way in the future for protecting our watershed. And there's a great amount of work that does need to be done. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Chief. Nicely said. All right, Council, do you have questions
I'll
or
also
comments?
add that Michelle Connolly with CUSP, I think is hanging out here in the meeting. And if anybody has some specific questions for her, we could probably bring her over.
I'll take that as a recommendation. Judy, could you bring Michelle Conley over, please?
And I'll just add that it is very exciting to be entering into this new arena and working with our partners in UPass. And I think we're already learning a tremendous amount as a staff.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Michelle, I guess it'd be a good idea to give you an opportunity to address the situation if you have comments for us.
Yes, absolutely. We at CUSP, Coalition for the Upper South Platte, are very excited about this opportunity to work with Manitou Springs. And we, as Chief Forsett said, we have many great partners. One partner he did not mention was Colorado Springs Utilities. We work very closely with them, with the State Forest Service, with the U.S. Forest Service, and with the fire chiefs up and down the UPass corridor. So this is a great opportunity for everyone, I believe, to protect the water supplies and infrastructure for Manitou Springs.
Great, thank you very much for your comments. Council, do you have comments or questions for our guests? Mr. Bremner.
Yeah, I'd just like to stay up on that north slope. I've in my travels, my trail running travels. I've seen quite a bit of mitigation up there, really good work been done up in there, and I think it's a great opportunity for Manitou Springs to become part of that that group, that intertwined group. You know, if we were just going to sit there by ourselves and let our undergrowth and fire problems proliferate without, you know, in our own little silo there, I think that might present a difficult situation. So I think it's good that we joined together and work together with all that group up there on the North Slope. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bremner. Other counselors? Okay, if we don't seem to have questions or further comments, perhaps it'd be appropriate to entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the staff writing of a letter of financial commitment to the 2021 Forest Restoration and Wildfire Risk Mitigation State Grant Program, Ute Pass Corridor Water Resource and Community Protection Project.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. I could see your lips moving on that.
Second that.
We have a second? Second, okay. All right, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Bremner. Very good. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor say aye and show your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Becca, Karen, Chief Forsett, Michelle, thank you very much for attending and providing the information. Let's push forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, our next item is Police Department progress on assessment and goals, and that'll be presented by Interim Police Chief Bill Otto. So Judy, if we can bring Chief Otto over, please. Okay, Chief, you have the floor when you're ready.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and chat with you. My purpose for being here tonight is to give an update on the goals of the Manitou Springs Police Department. I have prepared the PowerPoint so we can all go along. Everybody knows where I'm at and what I'm talking about. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Again, the purpose, provide information on goals and accomplishment, our staffing levels, our training, and to answer any questions anybody may have in regards to the police department. First thing I want to start with is our current staffing. I know when we spoke last, I told everybody this was my priority, is to get our staffing levels up to an acceptable place. I'm happy to report that we are. I will just give you a quick rundown of where we're at and what we're missing as far as staffing. We have one chief of police, 3 sergeants, 2 of those are patrol sergeants, and 1 is an administrative sergeant. We have a detective position that is vacant right now, and we have a school resource officer position, which is vacant right now, and I'll explain more about that as we go on. We have 1 part-time evidence technician, and that's 20 hours per week for a total of 40 for a pay period. 1 evidence technician, excuse me, I already said that. The executive police assistant, who we just hired, started on May 3rd. And we have a 11 patrol officers. That's what we're budgeted for. That's what we're authorized. I'm happy to report as of this past week, the 14th, Friday, we signed our last one on. He just graduated from the Pikes Peak Community College Law Enforcement Academy. We swore him in. He has started his training this week with us. So that gives us, we filled out all our patrol positions. We haven't been to this level, obviously since I've been here, but since 2015, we haven't had a full complement of officers. The only two positions that we're looking to fill are the SRO, School Resource Officer, and the detective position. We're currently working on that. Our School Resource Officer, we are contracting with El Paso County Sheriff's Office right now to fulfill our commitment to the school district for the remainder of this year. We are actively looking to hire a School Resource Officer. What we're looking for is someone with experience in that area. We've got ads out. We're making connections and trying to find one. It's going to be tough finding somebody with those qualifications, but I think we'll be able to get there. I mean, there's a couple different ways I've thought about we can do it. One is to continue, if they are willing, to contract with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office for the next school year. My preference is to hire another officer who has School Resource Officer training experience to step in and do that for us. That gives us another patrol officer during non-school times. So we can utilize that officer when school's not in, on patrol. It will help with manpower, vacations, whatever happens. We've got an extra body out on the road. Out of the 11, I think since the last time we've talked, we've hired 4 officers. One just completed the field training officer program and is on her own. She mans a shift. Another new hire, almost qualified for lateral experience. And what that means is he's got 2 years of experience. He just came underneath that. He's from Wichita, Kansas, has a lot of experience, worked in a bigger city, knows what he's doing. We'll be able to get him through pretty quick. He's not going to take the full 3 months to train up. He will work out just fine, and like I said, he'll be an asset to us shortly. And when I say shortly, I'm talking a couple weeks. We should be able to have him on his own. The other one, she just finished up about a year ago. She went to the Colorado Springs Police Force Academy, graduated from there, started her field training officer program, decided it was not for her, and resigned her position. We fully vetted her, made sure there was no issues on why she left. We did not find anything. I think we'll be able to get her out in probably another 7 to 8 weeks, and that will be just in time for the summer season here. The kid we just hired the other night, he's going to take the full 3 months. He's brand new, just graduated the academy. We will train him on how we do things down here in Manitou and get him on his own too. So we are, I'm very happy to say we're looking really good on our staffing. With more staffing, that creates opportunities for the community to have an officer either walking around downtown or be in a patrol car. Visibility's increased because we have more officers that aren't out on calls that can be seen. And we all know sometimes just the presence or the visibility of having an officer deters crime. Now, there's no way to put a number on what we're deterring, but we know it works. Seeing a cop on this corner, going around the next corner, oh, there's another one. That helps. That helps a lot. Like I said, I wish we could put a number on that and have some stats to back it up, but it does work, just having the visibility of more officers out on the road. We are looking good there. On the chart here, you'll see the code enforcement, which has been renamed Neighborhood Services, is no longer assigned to the police department. That's over at Public Works under Roy. So disregard that one. Oh, they do? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get one. Okay. So all in all, talking about staffing, we're looking really good. We really are, and I'm pleased. And I've got to say it, I can't say enough about the officers, the supervisors that we have in the police department that have gone out, done what I've asked them to do, and done it in record time. And when we vet these people, my direction to them was, I'm not looking just to fill a slot. I want quality people, people that are going to be good. They're going to be a good fit for Manitou, for our police department, and they're going to work out, and they plan on staying here for more than a year, getting their experience and moving on. And I think we've got those. Just a side note here too, I think last time we spoke, I mentioned that we had 4 of our officers, current officers, who had applied for other agencies. Since then, last time we spoke, 3 out of the 4 have pulled their applications and elected to remain with Manitou Springs Police Department, which is awesome. It's people we don't have to replace, people that know the area, know what the job, the goal is, the mission is for Manitou Springs. So I'm happy to report that 3 out of 4 have elected to stay with us. Some of these have been taken care of already. I want to make sure that I've got the updated one. Fill all patrol officer positions by the end of June 2021. Again, we've done that. We're ahead of schedule there. The only 2 positions that are not filled are the SRO and the detective. The SRO, I plan on having filled by the end of July, and we have to get that done so we can get them integrated into the school, to meet the school people, have the school people happy with who we've selected for them, and I also would like them to have a say-so on who they get. They will work for us, obviously, but they will be up there. The school, I'm sure most of you know the school, we are in a 50-50 contract with them. They pay 50% of the salary of the officer, and our PD pays the other 50%. My other goal, if you recall this, I wanted to create a list of eligible officers, and that's officers that have been vetted, applied. We like them. We would hire them if we had a position. What this does for us is if we do have someone resign for whatever reason, simply go to our list that we've created of eligible officers, make a phone call. Are you interested in the job? Yes, come on down, finish up the last couple of items in order to get processed in, and they're on board. And that's big. It wasn't, there was not one in place when I started. There's definitely a need for it. It cuts down on the time. I have talked about it before, but hiring a police officer it's an extensive process. It's just not, hey, you meet our qualifications, come on board. There is application, there is interviews, there is medical testing, there's psychological testing, there's polygraph testing, there's physical fitness. It's very long, 6 months to get somebody on. And then you go ahead and add at least another 3 months for the field training officer program. So we're getting up close to a year before we have somebody that is out on the road by themselves, filling a position. Having that first chunk done, I can't emphasize it enough, with somebody who's been vetted and has been deemed to be eligible, it's awesome. It helps us out greatly. It cuts down that 6 to 9 month period at least in half, if not more. we are building that list now because we have filled all of our vacancies except for the two that I mentioned. I want to talk a little bit about training for the police department. In addition to the training our police officers get when they go through an academy somewhere, there's ongoing training. Everything from firearms, we call it in-service. What takes place is there's weapons qualification. We do it twice a year here. I like to see it done quarterly. Every 3 months, our officers are out there, they're qualifying according to the post standards. We do that. We do driving. We do classroom stuff, harassment, bias policing, you name it, we do it. We try to get it all covered. We do that. We are mandated by post, our governing body for police officers, to do it, but it is a great refresher. We have district attorneys come down and update us on laws and things like that. It's a little bit more of a challenge in a smaller department because half of our force is either sleeping or working. So to get that coordinated, it can be tough, but we'll get it done. We have some of that stuff already lined up. In fact, we had officers out in the rain today training on firearms. It used to be they'd go out and they'd qualify and they were done. No, I want them out there doing situational shooting, shoot, don't shoot, other options other than using your firearm, whether it be verbal, less than lethal munitions, something along those lines. But that's kind of training that is, it's invaluable. You have to have it. The days of an officer pulling out their gun and pointing at somebody are over. It's just over. You have to have more things in your toolbox to use. And we're doing that now as we speak. We're getting people trained up. Wendell Pryor, I've been to one class of his when I first started here last year. We're inviting him down in addition to some other things to do some training on cultural stuff within the workplace specific to police departments, some harassment stuff specific to police departments. I'm guessing, I'm hoping that we can have Mr. Pryor down here the end of this month, early in June. And I've already been in contact with him and he's agreed to do it. We're just trying to figure out schedules. This is a big one. This crisis intervention training, commonly referred to as CIT, that is where policing is at now. And it's a class, it's a week-long class. Officers receive a certification from going to this class. But what it does is it teaches the officers on recognizing behavioral health issues, behavioral mental health, something that can be explain these people actions that we're dealing with. I don't know if I said that right, but it gives them an awareness, cues to look for, how to deal with them, not necessarily being the cop there, I'm going to take you to jail, but let's find out what's going on. Maybe this isn't a police issue. Maybe this is someone in crisis. Our officers have been going through this. I've gotten 3 in so far this year. My goal is to have every one of our officers certified in this. And like I said, you do receive a certification. This isn't one of these type of trainings that is, oh, it's nice to have. This is almost mandatory. You have to have your department either having your officers already trained in it or scheduled to be trained in it. I would like, actually, for Manitou Springs to put one of these on. For those of you who haven't heard about it, it's pretty intense training. I've been to it myself. They put you through the ringer. They hire professional actors to act out different scenarios, and the instructors teach the officers on how to deal with everything from emotional, behavioral, you name it, on how to deal with it, other than being the cop there with a gun and a badge that's going to take you to jail. Deal with the person and their issues individually. Like I said, we have, excuse me, we currently have 6 certified. My goal is to have 11. The problem with making a hard date is we have to go when the classes are available and when they're being put on. So I am looking, I've tasked my supervisors to be on the lookout for when they're putting them on. We're getting everybody through them as quick as we can. That is a goal, and that's a must do. That's not a wish list, that's a must do. We are going to do that. In addition, I'll bring this up. We just had an officer finish SWAT school, and I know everybody's like, SWAT school, why SWAT school? The stuff that's taught in these schools apply to everyday police stuff. We may not be kicking in a door or something, but it's excellent, it's invaluable to have officers who know tactics. And it makes it safer for the person we're interacting with, as well as the officers. It's not necessarily let's throw on all our gear and let's go break in a door and arrest this person. No, it's to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. You have somebody who has that kind of training to be able to direct the situation. That's why we send people to schools like that. The more, the better. Move on to equipment. We've ordered 2 new police vehicles. There's been a hang up with one of them, the Tahoe. We ordered a truck and a Tahoe. The Tahoe is on back order. This is all due to the COVID stuff. I know everybody's heard about, everything's delayed because of COVID. This is one of those issues. The Tahoe has been back ordered. I think they're going to be assembling it September. By the time it gets to us, it may be October, November. The good news is the truck that we've ordered is here, and it's being outfitted now for police operations as we speak. So we should have that one fairly soon, by the end of July, if not sooner. So that's the good news. Some of the other major equipment items, and these are things we have to have, body-worn cameras. They're not cheap items. They're about $5,000 each. 2 of them are going to be brand new, and one of them we're having it refurbished, and the cost on that is about $1,000 to $1,200 to get that done. And again, that's not a luxury item. That's something we have to have. The other items, because we got all these new people, we need more handheld radios. They've been ordered. I spoke with Sergeant Ballard yesterday, and we are on schedule to receive those in July as well. All the stuff that I'm talking about, it's been ordered. We are waiting basically for it to arrive, but it's been taken care of, it's ordered. We're just waiting on it. While we're speaking about vehicles as well too, the 2 vehicles, we're replacing 2 of them. One of them we're giving to Cindy Schwartz over in Neighborhood Services. It's actually now all the police lettering is being taken off, and the neighborhood service stuff is being added to it. That will be assigned to her over there. The other vehicle we will probably sell, and I've already got a line on somebody who says we can get, I think it's between $7,000 and $9,000 for it in the condition it is. So when we receive our second vehicle, the Tahoe, we'll be looking to sell that one. So we have a plan for all this stuff. New ones coming in and taking care of the old ones, repurposing them. One to neighborhood services and the other one we'll sell. We'll make some money off it. SOPs. It was brought to my attention that I probably didn't explain it well enough last time we spoke. We have SOPs and we have, oh, I'm sorry. They were changed on me. Okay. Interagency, excuse me, interagency cooperation. This is big. We currently use El Paso County Sheriff's Office for our major crimes and our SWAT events. We've had them down here before. I've worked on them before. They do happen down here. When SWAT is activated, they have a crisis negotiation unit that accompanies them on all calls. What I have done is offered up an officer, which is going to be an auxiliary position, to be on the crisis negotiation unit. And I think that speaks well for Manitou Springs, that not only, you know, we're using your services, but we want to help. We want to be involved too, because who knows when they're going to be down there. Hopefully they don't come down. We don't need them for anything. But if they do, we have somebody that's familiar with Manitou Springs, that's on the ground, and that is working with the sheriff's office and their units, taking care of our problems down here. I sent out a memo to our officers asking who would be interested in joining. I had 3 responses. We will be including them in when the sheriff's office tests for their new members. We're going to include our officers in with that testing. So we're going to work with the sheriff's office instead of them coming in and doing everything for us. We're going to take an active part in our own community. Also, the Beacon team, I don't know who's heard of that, but that's kind of like a mobile mental health / behavioral unit. And what they do is they have an officer and they have a clinician that ride around and they answer these mental health, emotional, behavioral calls. There's, like I said, there's a clinician on board who's trained, licensed, and everything, and they show up with the cop and they do what they can to help this person out. They do everything from mental health holds to just providing someone to talk to, someone with experience on how to deal with people in crisis. They can do that right there on the side of the road. They can provide them information on resources available to them and available to the community. I've been in touch with them. They are willing to take a more active role in Manitou Springs, and we use them already, and we use them in a limited capacity. And what I mean by that is they'll come down here and help us out if we have something going on. They happen to hear it on the radio. We share the same dispatch with the sheriff's office in Fountain and Monument and Palmer Lake, these other local agencies. So they're already listening for them. Our officers right now, they know if it sounds like it's going to be an emotional type of crisis thing, that they're going to call for that assistance. They're going to call and they're going to say, hey, do you have a Beacon unit available? And what they're going to do is they're going to come out and they're going to assist. Our officers are going to take the case themselves, but we're going to have that professional assistance available to them right then. And I am in negotiations with them right now on how we can use them more and get them more involved in helping us. I've talked about this before, and I'm a firm believer in it. We can't, and I say we, I mean Manitou Springs, we can't be in our own little bubble here and ignore the other agencies and what's going on in Colorado Springs or some of these other towns that are incorporated into the county. We need help. We can provide help to these other agencies. They provide help to us all the time. I think if we make the effort and show that we are willing to accept help and give help when needed, it goes a long way. It's much easier for me to make a phone call to another chief of police or a sheriff and say, hey, we need this, with them knowing that we have done the same for them. that we've been willing to assist where we can. And we do that already. We assist the sheriff's office and CSPD. You know, right down the road here, we have CSPD jurisdiction, Manitou Springs, and the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. We help them out with calls. They help us out with calls. And that's the way it should be. I mean, we're all in it together, not just police departments, but communities. Helping each other, it's the way to go. It pays dividends in the end. It really does. I think, okay, now I'm on SOPs. I apologize. I talked before about SOPs and policy and procedure. Like I started to say before, Ms. Howell corrected me and told me I was on the wrong slide. I hope everybody understood what I was trying to say, and obviously I didn't do a very good job of it, but policy and procedure and SOPs are two different things, but they serve the same purpose, if that makes sense. Policy and procedure, the Manitou Springs Police Department, we use Lexipol. Lexipol is it's a private business, and what they do is they create policy and procedures, and they tailor-make them to each individual agency. And they have clients all over the country. And they use best practices for law enforcement, for police departments. They keep up to date on state laws, federal laws, what have you. We have the ability to go in and change them to suit our needs. Lexipol's okay, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of the cookie cutter type policy stuff. You know, some of it's fine, but I think we need to have it more tailor-made to suit our purposes and our community. We can go in, and I've done a few of them with ex-Chief Churchill, and we've changed a few things, and we're in the process of starting to do that again. I want them more tailor-made for our purposes and our needs. SOPs, this is what I meant when we had nothing on our books about SOPs, and we don't. We have created, I think we're up to 26 SOPs that we've created, come up with a template on how I want it to look, and I'm not sure if I brought it, but my goal is to create an SOP manual for the police department. And what it will do, it will set a standard of how we do it, why we do it, and ensures we do it the same way every time. It could be something as simple as a traffic stop. Our officers need to know this is the correct way, this is our way, this is the Manitou Springs Police Department, this is how we do. These are the steps we follow. A DUI, these are the steps we follow. Hiring people, these are the steps we follow. They ensure that we do things the same way, correct way, all the time. And I think I saw Jeff's face on there. He could probably back me up on this. If there's any litigation, ever any litigation, they always request policy and procedure. They request SOPs. The worst thing I want to be able to tell somebody is, sorry, I don't have an SOP for that. They're going to look at me like, what? In 2021, you don't have an SOP on how you process a DUI. No, I don't. We're creating them now. In fact, what I have done, I have made it a goal, not only for me, but for the police department. I'm assigning monthly all supervisors to at least do 2 SOPs. We have a format. It's going to be used the same way every time. Every month, I'm going to have a meeting with the supervisors. When I say we, I'm going to be creating them as well, too. So I would like to eventually get the officers' input in it but starting out baby steps here, I want to make sure we're all on the same sheet of music and that we all approve of them. I don't claim to be a genius and know everything there is to know about police work. If I create something, I want my other supervisors to look at it and say, oh, that's correct. Yes or no, maybe we should do it this way. I want it to be a team effort. We are starting to do that. We will have our first meeting at the end of this month to review some of the SOPs. That's going to be an ongoing thing. The main goal is to create a easy to find, easy to read, easy to understand policy, procedure manual, and SOP. The SOP, like I said, we're starting from scratch on it. So it's going to be a work in progress, and I know we talked about it last time I met with y'all. But that's the goal. We gotta have that as a police department. We have to. And we're working towards it. We're working towards it. Next one, evidence. We've done a lot of work in evidence. I think everybody's probably heard about the issues Manitou Springs has had in the evidence facility. We've done a lot. We have plans to do more. I can tell you right now that I mentioned it earlier, we hired a new evidence technician, the part-time one. He's been in this is his second week with us, I believe. He's got experience doing it. He's got experience being a police officer. He knows what we're looking for. I have hooked him up with our independent auditor, Ken Hilt. So Ken can share his expertise and what the standards are, what we're looking for with him, and they're working towards it. I just received the last audit, which was conducted on April 30th. CALEA is kind of the standard police departments go by. Their error rate is 3.9%. When Ken first started auditing our evidence facility, we were up well over 8, 9, 10% error rate. Not good. On his audit on April 30th, we're making progress, not fast enough, but we're making progress. That number is shrinking every time he does an audit. So we're getting there. I'd like to see us get there quicker. Some of the things we are doing are just physical security of it, right? We have a limited amount of space. We're playing the cards, we're dealt with that. We have a small room. We don't have tons of room, tons of areas that we can put evidence in. We've priced shelving, collapsible shelving, and what this will allow us to do is take in more evidence, condense it into a smaller area, which will in turn give us more room inside the evidence facility we have. Price that. We'll be doing another walkthrough before we make a purchase. The tough part about that is there's not many companies out there that do this kind of work. We've looked around. The one that I like the best is up in Denver, and I will be inviting him down to show me exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and how it's going to benefit us, what we're actually going to save doing it. And I know we need to do it. I don't know who's been up there, probably not many, but it's a very small area, and the evidence just keeps coming in. I think I saw caught a piece the other night on the news. They were talking about evidence facilities here in town where everybody's in the same boat. Evidence just keeps coming in, and especially with the homeless population, we all know that their whole world is on their back, right? And we want to make sure we can keep track of it so we can get everything they own back to them and not go, oh, we accidentally got rid of it. Oh, we don't know where this is at. Unacceptable. We want to keep everything in the same spot and give everybody back their property. And we're on our way to doing that. And we're gonna continue with our audits. I spoke with Ken again today, as a matter of fact. And he assured me, he says, Bill, you know, you guys are making progress. You need to do more. And we're trying. I would bet that as soon as our new evidence tech gets his feet wet, more experience on exactly what he's dealing with, that pace will pick up, and that number will continue to drop the error rate. So we're making steps in the right direction. We're not going up, and that's good. We're going down. Our homeless population, excuse me, the LEAP program, the Locate, Enforce, Eradicate, and Prevent, will start at the end of this month. We will be sending out our officers, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted a truck, a pickup truck. It's going to be fully marked. That's the one that's being outfitted right now, but it'll give us the ability to move stuff without having to try to cram it all in the back of a Tahoe or a Ford Explorer. Give us more room. We have dates set up May, June, and July. Working with Keep Colorado Springs Beautiful. We're going to be cleaning up camp starting the 27th, early June, and then again in July. We've already posted a roster for extra duty for our officers to take part in. Before, we send one officer out to do this. For safety reasons, I told them I don't want to send one officer out anymore. They're going to go in pairs. There's going to be two of them. I know it costs a little bit more, but I'm not going to have an officer on the side of a mountain needing assistance and having no one there to give it to them. If we have two of them, one, we can get more work done, and two, we have safety built in with that. We are continually tracking and monitoring homeless camps and where they're at. I know in March and April, we found 4 new ones, and per our verbal order, hey, you guys need to pick up and move, they listened, they did it. Doesn't mean they didn't go down the road and hide, but they did what we asked them to. And that's, if they all did that, that would be fantastic. But it's an ongoing thing. We will begin, like I said, on the 27th, which I think is next week and a half. And we're going to be starting on the east side of town. I know there's a camp that's popped up over behind the Dillon, over there by the car wash. We have found out that they did leave when we asked them to, but they've left some of their stuff behind, so it looks like they're still there. I sent officers over there for the last few days in a row, and to verify that they're no longer there. Now, granted, they could see us coming in and go hide, and when we leave, come back, don't know, but we will be cleaning that area up starting on the 27th, so we should have that gone. Again, it's a continuous process. We know, and the homeless population, what they'll do, they'll be here in Manitou Springs. Our officers will contact them. They will listen to our verbal orders, and they'll move over to Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs Hot Team will contact them, tell them the same. They'll say okay. Then they'll go over to El Paso County jurisdiction. Same thing there. Cops will talk to them there. They'll move, but they come back here. So it's a cycle. It goes, full circle. We end up dealing with a lot of the same people. It may be months before we see them again, but we see the same people. And we're doing what we can. And I think I already mentioned it, but we're working with Keep Colorado Springs Beautiful and the Pikes Peak cleanup crew as well. So we're making the effort. We're doing what we can to take care of this. I don't see it going away. These people have to have somewhere to stay, and they're gonna stay where they feel comfortable and safe at. And our goal as a police department is not to go out there and make it miserable on them and threaten them and scare them into not wanting to come stay here, right? Sure, we could do that. That's not the way we're gonna do business. We're gonna work with them. If we can provide services, give them some other options to help them out, that's what we're gonna do. So we're trying to take that kind of approach, and I haven't received any reports that our officers have done what I said before, threaten, harass, make it impossible for these people who are displaced from their homes. I don't want to scare them into leaving. I want our officers and our department to do what we can to help them to find homes, or help them in any way we can. And that's kind of our goal, and that's what we're doing. We'll move on. Community goals. I'm kind of familiar with this one, Coffee with a Cop. I had one of these set up for, I believe it was February. And what we do is the local sheriffs, their command staff, police chiefs, their command staff, we meet at a local coffee house. And we invite the community to come out and talk to us. I've been involved in them before, and some of them, there's been some pretty good turnouts. And what it is, it gives the citizens of our community an opportunity to air any kind of grievances or ask any questions, share their concerns, and we do what we can to assist them with them. It's a good tool. I know it's probably been around that I know of for maybe 5-6 years, maybe even a little longer. I don't know when the last time Manitou Springs has put one on. We had one scheduled over at the Red Dog, like I said, but I can't remember the reason, to be honest, but it fell through. They couldn't do it. So we will be rescheduling that, and we will do it here in Manitou Springs. Neighborhood Watch. This is a big one, and this is an effective one. And we need the buy-in from the community to do this. We need to, and I am more than willing, and the officers and the supervisors are more than willing to host these things, but it's going to take the community and the neighborhoods to get together and decide they want one. We can't go out and beg somebody, hey, you need to form a neighborhood watch. We can definitely mention it to them, but we can't make them do it. What we do is we'll show up, we'll give them tips on what to do, what to look for, what to report, what's probably not worth reporting, and lend our expertise in helping people police their own neighborhoods. I'd like to do that. Increase foot patrols downtown. I know last year was different because of the COVID stuff, right? There wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on like that. That's going to increase very, very shortly now, as soon as we can get out of this rain and snow and stuff. I want to be out there myself. I want to be meeting these business owners. I want to talk with them. I want our officers to talk with them, get to know them, get them to trust us, make them understand or let them understand that the reason we're here is for them. We're here for the community. And the only way to do that is for us to get out there and actually shake hands and say, hi, how you doing? What can we do to help? How are things? Even if it's just to talk about a football game that happened over the weekend. By the way, Manitou Springs won the state championship. Great deal on that. But we need to do that. We will do that. Now that we're up to staffing, and I keep going back to that because that really limited us a lot when we didn't have the people. We do now. We will be doing that. And I mentioned this earlier also, increased presence and visibility of patrol officers and vehicles. I won't go into that again. I think it's invaluable. We really need to do that, and we will. We will. Some of the accomplishments since the beginning of the year. As I've said, we've hired 4 new officers. Got our manning up to what we're authorized and budgeted for. We filled 2 civilian positions. We purchased 2 vehicles. One will be done shortly, the other one as soon as it gets off the assembly line. And I may or may not have talked about this before, but what I've got our officers doing now is whenever they come in contact with a homeless, a behavioral health, emotional issue contact, they're stamping it. And what I mean by the stamping is there's a button on their MDCs, and they're like this, but they're in the car. They're like a laptop in the car, and it's got a drop-down box where you can go in there and you can mark it homeless, behavioral, mental health, whatever the drop-down screen says. They will click on that. We can create a data bank that I can pull from dispatch that lets me know how many homeless people we are dealing with in Manitou Springs, or not how many we are contacting. Maybe even people we've contacted more than once, twice, 3 times. It'll give us an idea of the issues we actually have that our police are involved in. We've started doing that. If they don't mark them in their patrol cars, they can simply tell dispatch at the end of the call, hey, can you stamp that homeless? Dispatch knows what it means. Our cops know what it means. A report will be generated that we'll pick up monthly, and we'll be able to provide stats on that. I talked about this before, I know. Creating a sense of pride and professionalism in the police department. I think it's part of it starts with our attire. When I send officers to training, I don't want them wearing t-shirts with Ozzy Osbourne on it and flip-flops and ripped jeans, right? I want them to wear a polo shirt that has Manitou Springs Police Department and their name on it, and to wear a pair of, they're called 511, they're basically khaki pants. It looks professional. I think our officers take pride in that, letting everybody know who they work for, as well as our civilian people. We have 2 of them in there. That's going to be the uniform as soon as these shirts come in. And I've got hats for them as well when it's hot outside. I've seen officers wearing Under Armour hats and all this other stuff. I don't want that. I want everybody to be uniform. That means looking professional, acting professional. It will instill pride in them. I think that's just it's a small thing we can do to do that. They should be in, I'm guessing, in the next couple weeks. They have to make the print sets. I'm not sure what they're called, but they have to develop the logos and stuff like that. But that has already been bought and paid for. We're just waiting for them to come in. So if you come into our office, you're going to see everybody. If they're not wearing what I'm wearing right now, they're going to be wearing something that says Manitou Springs Police. They're going to look professional. When they're out in the community, they're going to look professional. When they go to a training that's not being held here in our office, they're going to look professional, and people are going to know where they're from. They're going to be Manitou Springs police officers. I know I said this before. My goal is, for the police department, I want people knocking on our door. Hey, do you have any openings? Not the other way around, with people looking to leave after they get their 2 years, which qualifies them as a lateral officer, so they can be hired somewhere else. I think we're on our way there. We're getting there. I think morale is picked up. And I'll be the first to admit it's nothing I've done personally. I've told them what I've wanted, what I expected, and they've taken to it. And they're happy. I don't know how many times in the last month that I've been told by our officers that they're happy to be where they're at. And I think it's evident with 3 out of 4 people pulling applications from other agencies that paid more money. I know I talk about job satisfaction a lot. Pay is important, don't get me wrong. But job satisfaction, if they like where they're working, they're going to be happy. Sure, we'll work on pay and getting them paid more. But being happy to come to work where they're working, you can't beat that. And I think we're there. And if we're not there, we're getting there. We're pretty close. The last thing before I open up for questions, we've already talked about that one. A couple of things. When we met last time, I know I was asked, what do I need to make this police department better? If I'm going overtime, please, I'll stop. One of them is time. All right, I need time to get some stuff done. I know I've mentioned it before, but this stuff isn't going to happen overnight. I know everybody knows that. But I need time to implement things, get everybody on the same page. As far as the staffing issues, I need a deputy chief / commander / lieutenant, whatever we want to call it. I've done some research on it, and I could tell you that we need it, one, for a chain of command issue. You'll have the chief, you'll have a commander, you'll have your sergeants. We need I'll call him a commander because I like the commander title better. I know before, well before my time here, there was a lieutenant who acted in that role. It's going to be the same type of role. And the reason we need one, and I have referred to Chief Breister, his report, I read it all the time, and I think I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again though, I agree with about 99% of it. A lot of things that I noticed, I've read in Chief Breister's assessment of Manitou Springs Police Department. In his assessment, he also recognized the need for a second in command. What it will do is it will give the chief and it will give the sergeants more time to dedicate to supervising the officers, to handling other projects instead of being loaded down with admin duties. That's what that position will do. Internal affairs, which is our internal discipline process. Ideally, you should have a middle person. What I mean by middle person, like I said, you have the chief and then you have the sergeants. Well, if the sergeant is the one being investigated internally, you want somebody that outranks that sergeant to do the investigation. You don't want a peer, you want somebody who outranks them doing it. A sergeant can do an officer investigation. A commander can do a sergeant investigation. The chief's responsibility in those is to be the final say. And what I mean by that is when the investigation's done, recommendations on discipline, if any, are made by the chain of command, and then it's brought to the chief to look at it all and say, okay, I agree with this, I don't agree with that, this is what we're going to do. Having that in place, that's invaluable as well. And it helps with the chain of command. It adds another link in that chain of command. So you're just not going from, if an officer has a problem with a sergeant, the next step would be the chief, the way we are structured now. If you have a commander, someone who could maybe settle at their level instead of making it all the way up. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every instance is an internal affairs investigation. But when they do arise, and unfortunately they do, we have a system in place to deal with it, whether it be a sergeant or an officer. It doesn't matter. We have the right rank structure in place to deal with any type of complaint. I think we need that, and we need that as soon as possible. I have spoken with our finance people. I think I can, well, I know I can do that with our budget without asking you guys for any more money. I think we have the funds necessary to make that happen. What I'd like to do as well, and I want to give this one a little more thought because there's some things that go into it, is to create another leadership position and to help with our supervisor staffing for 24/7. Right now, we're at a point where you can go from 6 to 10 to 12 hours without a supervisor being on duty. Doesn't mean the officers don't know to call one of the sergeants or the chief. If we have a designated supervisor, a corporal, which is in between a sergeant and an officer, who's a designated worker. I mean, they're just not there to supervise, they're there to work, just like an officer, but they're also the designated supervisor. Excuse me, plenty of times, other agencies will be calling 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, hey, can I speak to your boss? Well, I don't have one on. Okay, well, who's in charge? Well, I guess I am. I'm officer or whoever. And it could involve a crime that happened in Manitou Springs, or they're just looking for information. If we have a designated supervisor, like someone who's in charge, first of all, it's more professional, and it serves a purpose. There's always somebody in charge. To be able to call somebody and say, hey, this is what we got going on, I can give you an example. There was a situation that happened a couple weeks ago. I did not find out about it until 3 days after the fact. I'm like, how come a sergeant didn't call me and tell me what had happened? Well, the officers, they're the same rank. They're not going to order their counterpart or their peer around. By designating a corporal, first of all, it'll be a cost savings over hiring another sergeant or promoting one. I'm talking a couple bucks an hour more than a regular officer, and the figure I came up was $2 an hour more for a total yearly cost of $4,000 extra just for the $2 added on to a corporal's pay. That will give us that coverage. That will give us the coverage to have a supervisor 24/7, which we need. We need to have somebody in charge every day, all night long, 24/7. Having said all that, I'll answer any questions that anybody has. I know I've talked a lot and probably babbled some. Hope not too much, but I am open for questions.
Thank you, Chief Otto. And with that, I believe Denise had a comment she wants to make.
Yeah, I just have a couple. I do want to recognize Ben for the evidence tech. Ken, I spoke with him on the last day whenever they did the audit, and he said that Ben took that program to a whole new level, and he could not speak highly enough for what Ben did. The other thing is, as we look at Chief Breister's comments, there's a couple of things that we've put in place. HR is now spending at least a half a day over there, if not a day a week there. Kelly also went to Corral Springs and is being trained with the Corral Springs HR department at the police department, so that she's understanding the police side of it, and she has their direct line now to answer any questions. The other thing that was there is the hiring process. I did mention whenever Chief was out that they did get a SOP in place, and so they now have a thorough SOP in place for all hiring, which was one of the things that they talked about. If you go through the entire process, there's 21 steps that Chief Preister put in place, and there's 9 that have been completed, and the rest of them are now being worked on pretty aggressively. There's a couple, and there's one that's number 4 that we do need to ask direction for you from council, and that's conduct a review of the current physical office space and consider a ballot initiative or issuing of bonds to build a new city government complex or relocate the MSPD. And there is a concern about the facilities over there, and I think we've all heard that many times. And so we do need direction from you of what do you want to do in November? Do you want this to go to a bond? Do you not? Do you want us to do some work? We've got some preliminary work, but I need direction. If you want to wait till November, if you want to wait for another November, but that was number 4 on Chief Breister's comments. So those are some things that I want to mention, and we can go through each one of these if you want and what's been completed, but a large number of them have been completed. The other thing, as you know, that if you were here before, we did put a step process in place, which was, we did a pretty big analysis on that, and it was to cut the overtime to help with the budget as we did it, which did happen. But we are looking right now of if that's really going to sustain it. So both Kelly and Chief are working on the pay and what that looks like long-term. So I just wanted to add those few things. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And with that, let's open up the floor to counselor questions and comments. Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I have a few comments. First of all, I was very encouraged by that crisis intervention training that you mentioned, and also the other training towards, I think, in today's environment, we read in the news about, police killings and so on, and I think it's really encouraging, that we have such a progressive police chief right now who's looking into better policing. In that respect, I also was encouraged by your comments about the homeless people. I mean, every person that's homeless has their own story, and I think it's important to be compassionate and understand. And we're not ever going to completely eradicate the homeless. That's not possible. That's too draconian. I think what we're doing right now in around Manitou Springs with the Pikes Peak Cleanup Crew and Keep Colorado Springs Beautiful, as well as the LEAP program, we're protecting the surrounding forests. And I've seen a comment that, well, Boulder has made it illegal to sleep on the streets and so on. Well, we have that in Manitou Springs as well. It's illegal to camp in the city limits, and it's being enforced within the city limits. So the problem we have is we have surrounding woods, which can be either private property in a lot of cases, or national forest, or different areas like that. And I think we're addressing that pretty well with the LEAP program, as well as other citizen initiatives such as Pikes Peak Cleanup Crew, Keep Colorado Springs Beautiful. I think we're doing a pretty good job, keep it under control. So that's my comments on that. Regarding the new facilities, I agree that we absolutely do need facilities. I think if we're going to make a November ballot initiative, we need to have the numbers. We need to, how much is it going to cost, and how much are we going to have to increase the mill level, and we're going to have the numbers before we can put it on the ballot. So I do support that. Thank you.
That would be a big help. New facilities would be fantastic.
We need to have the numbers.
So we can try to pull that together. I just need direction if you guys want us to move in that direction for November, or if you want to do the following
Well,
November.
Before we make
And
the
so-
decision, we have to have.
Right,
yeah.
but I need direction of whether you want us to put the initiative and the time towards this. And again, Chief Reister says, conduct a review of the current physical office space and consider a ballot initiative or the issuing of bonds to build a new city government complex or relocate the MSPD. So that is exact direction that he gave in his police thing. So I need direction from you guys of how you want us to move.
Okay, counselors, I think we're kind of back to general questions and comments here to the briefing. Certainly, if you want to speak to the idea of a bond issue or the police facility, that would be okay. But let's keep the discussion broad right now. Counselor Chandler, I believe.
Thank you, Chief Otto. I have two questions. One was regarding the commander and supervisor positions that you said are integral to you doing your job. Would those be two new positions? Those would be two additional staff people, or would those be hired from within? I'm trying to get a sense of what it is you need, because those sounded like really important things.
Yes, ma'am. No, they would not be new positions, creating two new positions from the outside. What I would do is everybody eligible to be a commander would test, and those are in-house. And we would select from that pool. Same for the corporal. So I would not want to go out and put an ad out in the paper, hey, I'm looking for a commander, hey, I'm looking for a corporal. We have the funds right now that we can do it with our current staffing, with the people we have.
So we wouldn't have to say hire two new patrol officers, for example. Okay.
No.
Because I'm assuming that your officers, are they 12-hour shifts, and they're
Yes.
and there's at least, I would say, at least two, or how many are for each 24-hour shift, how,
We have 2 officers, up until recently, and I'm saying recently because the officers that we've just hired, they're not done with training, so we really can't count them as being out on their own and filling a slot yet. We currently have 2 shifts, 6A to 6P, filled by 2 officers, 6P to 6A, filled by 2 officers. Now that we have a full complement of officers, 11, assuming they're all done with their training, we will be able to incorporate a swing shift. And that, those hours, we can modify those as we go, but they could be 1 o'clock. Generally, they're called power shifts, and they're instituted during the most busy times, and we can change them. You know, summertime, obviously we're more busy, so we want them for the peak times. So we're working 3 12s, 4 days off, and then 3 on, 4 off, 3 on, 3 off.
okay.
12-hour shifts.
Thank you for that. And my second comment and question was, I'm really thrilled to hear that 3 of the 4 officers that were looking to maybe move on have decided to stay. You did mention in your comments that even though these officers were leaving for potentially higher paying jobs, are we as a city offering competitive salaries to our police force?
Compared to, we're obviously we're unique. Manitou Springs is. We're smaller, but our size doubles, triples in the summer times, right? We don't compare to what the sheriff's office or the Colorado Springs Police Department is paying their officers. And that's, and I know I kind of talked a lot about the job satisfaction thing. I am all for paying our officers more. And I am working with Kelly right now on bringing that up. We have to stay competitive money-wise, right? They could love coming to work, but if they're not compensated fairly, the one officer, an example, the one officer that has decided to move on, it's because of money. Nothing to do with not wanting to be here, would rather stay here, but he's a younger guy, he's got a young family, and he wants the ability to make more money in the future. So we do have to up our pay for our officers.
And lastly, I will just say that I do support a different facility for the police department. You are literally on top of each other, and if that needs to be a bond issue, we can discuss that at a later time. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Other counselors, do you have comments? Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Thank you. First of all, kudos on getting the staffing up. I think that that's a huge accomplishment, so thanks for working on that. Secondly, I have a whole page of questions, so I'm not going to ask them this evening. I do want to sit down with you, though, and go through all of my questions and comments at some point and get to know you as our acting police chief better. Regarding space, there's no doubt in my mind that you guys need more appropriate space. I am certainly not prepared to make a recommendation tonight if that should be a bond issue or something else. I would just say from a high level, I do support you needing appropriate space, which you don't have. But how that requirement is fulfilled, I feel a lot more work needs to be done on that before we can even give guidance. Okay. So let's get together.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Other counselors? Natalie, Mr. Shada, anything? Natalie.
Sure. I mean, I would just like to sort of reiterate what Nancy just said, that I'm also in favor of figuring out a solution to our current situation. You don't have the space you need to be effective, but I also don't know what that next step looks like just based on the information that we have today.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Mr. Shady, do you have comments? Okay, thank you. I guess that leaves me. Yeah, relative to facilities and a bond issue, I think I would tend to agree with the Mayor Pro Tem that there's a lot of work that would need to be done to pursue that. That's not to say we shouldn't do it, and I think probably a lot of study and examination is merited there. Chief, I do like the idea, the improvement in morale and just the esprit de corps in the department, so keep pushing on that. I know it's always it's a huge and time-consuming thing to change a culture. It takes a great deal of time, and that's what you asked for, and I get that. It's enormous, and it's probably more difficult for an organization like a police department when you have to interact with so many people and you don't necessarily see the entire team every day or constantly. So persevere, thanks, push on. Good job there. I like the idea, the things you referenced here as far as community outreach, the neighborhood watch. I think we have an example here tonight of a gentleman whose neighborhood might be a good candidate for something like that.
Absolutely.
Coffee with a cop, a great idea. And your predecessor and I had talked about going around and walking Manitou and just saying hi. And COVID hit, and so perhaps as COVID goes away, we'll do that, if you're up for that.
Yes, sir.
Great. I think that's sufficient for my comments. Let's get to know each other a little better.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Anything else, council? Okay, I mean, I think this is good. We had an enormous set of questions and concerns, I think, relative to the police department. So working through this step by step over time, I think is good for us, and I hope it's good for the police department as well. If there are no further comments, Chief, I would thank you for your presentation, and let's stay tuned. Okay. We're going to have an executive session a little later, and yeah, so I was going to say, let's see if we can finish off, and then we'll take a break before we go into executive session, unless anybody wants a break now. You want to push on? Okay, let's push on. Next item is merit increase for city administrator. Kelly, are you going to lead us through this one? No. Mr. Kelly, that's Kelly Padilla, so might get a little confusing. Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead, Denise.
So let me just do a quick introduction. When you guys did my review, we talked about a merit increase, and Mayor Pro Tem asked me to do some research and come back with a recommendation. So I just waited until we got the HR person on and allowed them to do the research, and they've done the recommendation and moving forward. So that is why Kelly is presenting, is I asked her to take this on and to do the salary study, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to Kelly from here.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. When I started here, I took a cursory glance at the salaries and the classification lines in place, and made quick notes that there were certain positions that were grossly out of line. And thus far, I've made two critical changes that would prevent a potential equal pay for equal work claim. I'm working my way through each of the positions but as Denise said, that there was already a kind of a direction that we needed to look at this position. So basically, the compensation study it's a responsible method so that we can develop. Did you have my slides? I'm sorry. So I processed the compensation study so that we could develop a very fair way and a method so that we can look at different cities of the similar size and things like that. So if you want to go to slide 2. So when we do a compensation study, they all have to adhere to the federal guidelines so that, enforced by local, state, and federal wage laws. And that includes EEOC, FLSA, and the Equal Pay Act that was just recently implemented, which changes a lot of things that we have to look at, such as gender, age, all those different biases. You can take into consideration sometimes length of employment, et cetera, but there's a whole lot of variables that go into determining what equal pay is. But when you're looking at a classification and doing a compensation study, when you have salaries that are grossly misaligned, it allows the organization to place specific pay ranges based on that variety of factors so that we can have competitive pay. We always want to have excellence in these key positions, most specifically the city administrator. So we need to make sure that we're market competitive, we can attract, we can retain, and we want to maintain that extraordinary talent so that we can deliver that exceptional service to the people in this community. So that's where I start, where I jump off. That's my jumping off point. So if we could go to the next slide. So the job that I did, and you'll see it in a slide down later, but there was 25 different locations, some similar and some not as similar, but they have a lot of the same mutual job responsibilities. But primarily they are the same mid-range point for the citizen censuses and the job duties. So when we look at a classification study, one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we're matching job for job. Some places have different job descriptions or job titles, shall I say, versus some places that call them city managers, some are city administrators, some are directors, some are CEOs. So they all have different titles depending on where you're from, which location, which municipality, which public organization. So you take all those job titles and we compare all the duties. And here's a list here. I don't think I'll have to go over all of them for you, but when you look at them, you're looking at a very high level that they all report to the city council or a board of directors directly. They're responsible for all the budgets and the financial condition of the organization as well as the community. They oversee the policy development, and that's not just employee policies, that's all the policies involved in running this organization. They do the strategic planning. They work with the planning department and the council so that we can all be on the same page and go in the right direction as far as, those financials and what our goals are. So here's the list of the mutual job responsibilities that I compared to the other leaderships in the other communities. So just so you have that for your information, okay? So if we go to the next slide, the things that I did use for the study, I used various cities throughout the state of Colorado that present similarities with the city of Manitou Springs. So I used salary comparisons, general fund expenditures, family coverage benefit costs with percentages paid by the employer, because that is a very critical component when people are looking to find a new position or to stay in a position. So, and also the employee coverage benefit costs with the percentages paid by employer. So when you look at just compensation, it's not just your hourly wage or your annual wage, it's the benefits that we can provide that go with it that tend to enhance bringing somebody in or keeping someone. The other things I used were essential job duties. Did they offer a company vehicle? Did they offer a car allowance? What was the average cost of housing in that specific area? And the populations of the communities. So these are the basic components that are used in any general study when you're comparing compensation for just about any position, not just a city administrator. So here's the cities that we use for comparison. As you can see, some of them have larger populations and most likely larger finances, but some of them are smaller as well. So we have to go in and find a good average. But keep in mind, they all have the same responsibilities and the same general principles of liability as far as making sure that the organizations are meeting their expectations. So Judy, if you go down. So this one's a little harder to see, but if you go through, I've listed, and these are the average salaries for that salary right there. These are the average, this is the salary that they're currently making, but that lays somewhere within their current compensation schedule. So that doesn't mean that's the top scale, doesn't mean it's the bottom scale. It means that that's what is currently being paid, but they're falling somewhere in their ranges. I've given you the population so that there's some comparison there. Then the general funds so that you can see the type of fiscal responsibilities that each location, those directors or administrators have. Then additionally, the family coverage benefit, the cost to the employee. This is coming out of the employee's salary. And then, of course, the employees only benefit the cost to the employee. And then there's a percentage of the benefit packages that are being paid by the cities. And I'm going to go over this in just a little bit more. But if you look, let's take Avon, for example. They're paying 92.26% of a family coverage. So that means that you're paying less than 18% for your benefit, which is a very rich plan. And I would tell you, compared to the city of Manitou Springs, the employer here is paying 74%. So there's a huge discrepancy just in one comparison. But I've got some total numbers for you down here a little further. But I think it's really important to understand where we're falling as far as paying benefits, because that is a big component of compensation. So then I looked at, are they assigned a car? Yes or no? Do they receive a car allowance? A lot of places don't, some places do. The places that do are more than extremely higher than what Manitou Springs pays. And I'm blocking my vision here with a... So then the average cost of housing. Obviously housing is going up just day by day. The costs are just ridiculous. But I do think that we have a really good base here, and we're able to compare very nicely what we're looking at for cost of housing. So here's kind of the overall. Out of these 25 cities that I examined, please note that Manitou Springs was the third lowest paid city administrator of all these cities. Manitou Springs is 13th, so we're right in the middle of what that average cost of housing is. So when you compare that to being the third lowest paid, that really is kind of an off balance here. We run 15th, which is again roughly mid of the general fund expenditures. So we're balancing the same type of budgets pretty much, but we're being paid a lot less. Our family medical premium costs, we rank 7th highest. So our families here, not just city administrator, all of our employees, are ranking out of the 7th highest. We're paying that much more than any other city employee for our benefits. So keep that in mind. That's something I do want to look at this year in our, when we renew our benefit and our benefit packages. But we really do need to consider looking at changing what we're paying, what portion we're paying versus what portion the employees are paying. We're Manitou Springs right now, city administrator, we rank in the bottom 5 for benefit coverage for family plans. So that means that we're paying lower employer premiums than 20 other cities. So I think that's very important to note that we have some work to do in that area. Then if we look here, we pay less than 50% for the monthly car allowance for the city administrator than 16 other cities providing allowances. Now, keep that in mind. There are other cities that don't pay anything, but they may offer a vehicle or they may not. So it is relevant, but it's not as relevant as the benefit component of this. So I wanted to make that very clear. So based on all of this information, and I know I've went through it fairly quickly, but you're welcome to ask me questions here in a moment. I do put some recommendations for the compensation range for this particular position. After I've completed the review of the comparable cities, the current compensation for the city administrator position is not in line with other organizations. So we're ranking as the 3rd lowest paid. Our benefit costs for both the family and individual plans rank in the bottom 5. Housing costs rank in the middle of these other cities. So when you take a look at that, and we're in the bottom of salaries, bottom of benefits, but our housing costs are mid-range, there's a big gap there, and we've got to look at trying to accommodate for that. So my recommendation is that the city administrator position is realigned so that we can enable current and future recruitment and retention and remain competitive in this current market. And I know Ms. Chandler, I heard you say to the chief of police, where are we competitively with the police salaries? We're grossly out of range for the city administrator salary. And I understand that the budget is a concern. Currently, our minimum range for the city administrator position is $111,000. I would recommend that bottom range of that salary be increased to $124,000, and that's just for a recruitment purpose. If you wanted to hire someone in with minimum experience, $124,000 might get us someone that's partially qualified for that job. I am also recommending that the maximum salary be increased from $155,000 to $173,000. And the reason I'm saying that is because currently the median compensation that I'm looking for is $158,000 to fairly compensate this position, the city administrator position. So at $120,000, that's the current salary right now for the city administrator. And that's the 3rd lowest in the state out of the 25 places that I have evaluated. Now I know that the city administrator position was not considered in 2020 when all the other staff were adjusted. to try to get in line with the market. And so I wanted to make it very clear that this salary has been out of line for more than a year and a half to 2 years. So if you can look on this next progression page here, if you look at the bottom bullet, basically, I understand that the budget's of concern, but I am recommending that this increase in salary is provided in increments over the next 3 years, just to help with the budget concerns, so that we would do an increase in 2021 to the 132,950. And then next January, we would increase when the annual increases go into effect for all staff, and then the following January for all staff. This is to get us in line with the current median salary that is being paid to other city administration positions throughout the state of Colorado. So I think that's quite a bit of information to kind of take into consideration. Does anyone have any questions or comments for me?
Council, anyone questions for Kelly? Mayor Pro Tem?
Is it typical that compensation studies are typically done about every 2 years for the entire workforce?
Typically every 2 years.
Okay, and we haven't done one for like 4 years, I believe?
It's been quite a while. Of course, I've just come on.
Yeah, no, I'm not blaming
but,
you.
No. I know that, but I'm trying to say that the last one that I found was in 2018 for this particular position. So that's, we're coming up on 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It is something that we struggled with, and it does need attention. So it's another great thing that you're on to help us work through these things, because we're 2 years out of sync right now. So you're.
Yeah, in this, it's almost, sometimes it's like, when you buy a new car off the lot, it changes value tomorrow. So we got to try to keep up with the times. Unfortunately, our budgets don't always allow us to do that. But I do think that we're in a critical situation right now in the current market, where we're fortunate right now to have a very dedicated and experienced individual in the position. The other thing that I did want to mention real quick was most of the places that I called, their administrators were working anywhere from 40 to 50 hours a week. I will tell you, our current city administrator works 60 hours a week, if not more. So I think that it's very important that the support is there, because I don't know that we could recruit anyone into this position to work as hard as the city requires at the salary that it's currently at.
And I would also just say that, previously the city has had to hire consultants to do compensation studies for us. And I think that speaks to the management of our city administrator, that she hires somebody like you, and we basically kill two birds with one stone and ultimately save some dollars. So thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Other councilors, comments? Councilor Chandler, please.
Thank you. I did have some curiosity of the cities that you chose. I went through the list pretty thoroughly. I noticed that overall cost of living was not a variable. I see some resort towns like Avon in the mix, but I was just curious about some locales perhaps skewing the results a little bit. For example, Loveland, whose city administrator makes $242,000, and they have a population of over 101,000 people. I was trying to, and 100% compensation. I was kind of trying to make, wrap my head around why some of these locales were chosen to come up with these overall figures.
Well, we have to get a good mix in there, because we have to look where our competitors are. So we're looking at maybe vacation destinations, because Manitou Springs is a huge visitor. There's a lot of tourism here. So looking at tourism places, because if you want to pull someone in, you're with Manitou Springs, it's more of a tourism. Now, I will tell you, I didn't use Colorado Springs because they are so much higher. Their compensation is extremely high for even all of their levels, police, HR, all the levels. So I did not use them. But we have to go in and look at the variable areas. But some of those areas I chose just because they're destination places. They do have a higher cost of living, such as Manitou Springs. And you have to really make sure that you're getting a good mix in here. Okay, I understand they have a lot bigger population, but Colorado Springs has 750,000 people, so I didn't want to use them. But we have to get somewhere, we have to find some variables and get some in the mix. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because if we were competing, trying to get someone like at a Loveland level, we need to make sure that we can compete, right?
Thank you for that. I also, on the slide where you showed the recommendations through 2023, no doubt our city administrator is an incredibly hard worker. It's so much improved. I just have an issue of committing automatically to future raises. I mean, without going through, our evaluation process, this past evaluation period, I believe only Councilor Wolf is not here tonight, who was part of that process, that we had decided that perhaps when we do another evaluation this December, that we decided there was consensus of using perhaps a more appropriate tool or different tool, perhaps one that the Colorado Municipal League recommended, as a more robust evaluation tool. So I guess based on that, I just put this out to the council to take for consideration, that I just feel a little uncomfortable committing to future salary increases without part of that process in the mix.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess my goal was, rather than let's make this recommendation and get to the midpoint of where everyone is immediately. It was kind of a soft move up the line. It's not really just like an automatic increase. I understand how you're seeing it now, but my vision was, okay, rather than let's dump this, because that's quite an increase, all at one time. So it was my vision to be considerate of the budget and hope that we could move up incrementally rather than just recommend a jump from here to here. Does that make sense?
So those were more ranges that you were recommending for the next 3 years. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Or
basically, the goal is to get this position at least mid-range. Okay, so that it's a marketable job. It's something where we can retain and we can attract. And so when you look at the mid-range, I think I put it down here, 158 is the mid-range. And that was my recommendation initially, we need to go mid-range. But in consideration of the budget constraints, I was trying to gently move this position into that salary over the next few years. But I didn't really consider your concerns with the performance. However, the other recommendation that I would make then is to move this into the mid-range.
Okay. And so my last question is, is this the same tool, the same cities? You mentioned at least another position that was pretty seriously out of range. Was this the same?
I try to use the
cities
same
and same criteria that you used for.
Is if they have the same positions that we do, because a lot of cities don't align in the same positions, but for the most part, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. Other councilors? Natalie?
Okay. So first off, I guess, in participating in this as a new counselor, I feel comfortable with it because I sort of look at it as more of a correction than a raise. So I guess that's how I feel like I can participate, not having been through an evaluation and sort of those things. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. But I do wonder then, what do next steps look like? I mean, do we bring Becca in from the finance department? How do we sort of actually have a conversation about what our current budget looks like and how we could make something like this happen this year?
Well, I think that the recommendation is to get to this mid-range of 158. I do think that there needs to be a conversation with the finance department to see how feasible that is. But again, that is why I was doing the incremental, kind of getting us there, trying to be sensitive to that. But if we feel like if we feel like we have to attach it to performance, then I would just recommend that go to the mid-range. But we would definitely need to make sure that finance has this capability, make sure the budget can handle this move.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, as I understand it, we're talking about 12,000 extra dollars this year, correct? And I agree with Natalie that it's not a raise.
No.
It's I also don't associate it. It's not merit increase. It's not a raise. It's just to normalize. So, and then in 2022, we just budget it in our budget cycle that's coming up. So the question is, is there $12,000 in the budget this year? And Denise has her hand up, so she probably knows the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very supportive of this, but I've lived through these very difficult discussions previously with the entire staff. So,
Denise, did you have a comment?
Yeah, a couple of comments. One is when Kelly first showed this to me, I said, we cannot go with the 150. So I'm just going to be honest with you. I said, there is no way you can do this the first year. I said, you need to bring it over 3 years. It's just not fair to do that, I don't think. So I will tell you that was a recommendation on my part to not do it, just from a financial perspective. The other thing is this just becomes a mid-year adjustment, which is an easy thing to do, right? We look at where we go. We're going to be cutting some things, adding some things as we go through, and it's your mid-year adjustment. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Other counselors? Okay. Actually, I've got a couple comments. I'm not real keen on the idea of doing this over 3 years. I think maybe, I would be more, I think we should just do 1 year at a time. I can see bumping the salary up. The 12,000, actually, I think closer to $13,000. But I would just have a 1 year commitment on that. I think kind of a base and bonus or a base plus bonus based on performance is an idea that we've used in the past. I think there's something to be said for that. It would mean we'd have to identify goals, and we'd have to have goals for Denise that she could work to, so it'd be fair for her to work towards that bonus. But I think that is something that I worked for a company where bonuses were an enormous incentive, and they were paid in company stock, and it was the most insane organization you've ever seen. We had people working weekends coming up with ideas and stuff. A few people, not everybody did it, but boy, it really motivated people. And so I do think that the bonus idea is a nice carrot. Yes, that's the nuts and bolts of my thoughts. I think some of the work you've done there is insightful. I do have other questions as to how this affects morale and city staff altogether. I realized I think there was a bump in December 2017 across the board that Jason Wells was the architect of, and then another one that occurred 2019 or 2020. It was before my time, I believe. So I think too about what the effect is going to be on the other city employees. And certainly I want to acknowledge Denise's capabilities and her hard work. My God, 60 hours is probably a low ball figure there. So those are my thoughts. Council?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly?
Can I just make one quick comment? I do want to make it very clear that this salary survey was based upon the position and not the person. So, and that's how all classifications are processed. It doesn't have really anything to do, I mean, I did mention the hours only because I asked other people how many hours it took to run their community. But just so you know that the survey is based upon the position, not the person.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what the mayor said. I think it'd be good to do it 1 year at a time. But I think we should also have the goal of making the compensation increase in 2022 and 2023, but take it 1 year at a time. But I do definitely think we need to get in line with what's competitive across Colorado. And I don't think we are there right now, so I agree with all what you've done.
And I think I could get on board with what Mr. Bremner said. I wouldn't necessarily say that further increases are guaranteed, but certainly they're not precluded either. Just 1 year at a time. I'm sorry, Mr. Shada.
Yes, I guess I'd like to know how this has been calibrated to experience and education as well as performance. I understand there are these ranges, but you're picking their current salaries, not their ranges. Is that correct?
Well, they're all mid-range. So we take into consideration where people are. When you do a compensation study, you look at what people are making in other places. So you look at who is your competitor and what happens if your employee wants to go to that competitor. What will their salary most likely be? And when you get, most of these are mid-range. So you have to take the average of the mid-ranges is what you have to do. So when you're looking at education, city administrators can start anywhere with a bachelor's degree and go on up, to PhDs. It just depends on the organization and what they want to accept for their education and their experience. So I've looked at all mid-range people, and they do range from bachelor's up to master's. And some of them have 5 years experience, and some of them had 25 years of experience. So there's a combination of all that groups together. So it's a pretty complicated process, and sometimes it's hard to explain, but it's not just picking, well, we can go to the places that just want to hire somebody with a master's and get their ranges, but I can tell you that they're going to be the highest salaries of all. So that's why we have to get a good mix. We have to get a good mix of smaller communities and larger communities. So it's all about finding averages.
I guess I just find this, I don't see how there's a calibration to it. It sounds like to me you've talked your way around that, but that's not satisfying to me.
Okay, what would you like to see?
Like as an example, I mean, let's just look at your sheet here, okay? As an example, right off the bat, the city of Loveland is paying $242,000 a year. What's the experience of this person?
They actually have a master's degree.
Okay, how many years have they been performing this job?
They currently, from what the HR person told me, was like 7 years.
Okay, all right. So let's move down to Loveland, Colorado. How about them?
Oh, I have to look at them. Hold on. I mean, I don't really, I can give you generalized stuff, but without my documentation in front of me, I don't feel comfortable giving you specifics. So let me look at Loveland. So 183. If I remember correctly, Loveland that person has a bachelor's, if I remember correctly.
How many years of experience?
I can't tell you right off my head.
Okay,
If you
thank you.
want the specifics, I will get them for you.
Yes, I would like to see that because
Okay.
I think in any industry, people pay for experience. Sometimes they pay for education, okay? And then there's performance in terms of how that organization is perceiving that value. And I guess I don't see that calibrated into this as well.
Well, I do know that, I don't think performance evaluations, I have asked for that information in the past, I can ask for it again, but typically that's a private thing that they won't release. They're not going to tell me whether, you know.
Well, one
What their
possibility
performance
is, let's say,
evaluation is.
longevity in terms of the current organization. I think that most organizations that have executives are not going to likely keep somebody around for 10 years that they're basically unhappy with.
I agree
Okay?
with that.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? You know.
Right, but
And so.
to ask for performance evaluations.
And so
that's-
it just seems like to me there needs to be some more calibration in here. One of the things that, you know, I understand, I'm not certain of I'm not certain of the technique, okay? I certainly would also like to kind of see some more calibration in terms of in here, in terms of what's the cost of living in an area, okay? And things like that, because I think organizations are also very sensitive to that kind of thing in terms of retaining people, okay? As an example, Loveland tends to be in the Boulder market, okay? You cannot touch a 1,000 square foot home, okay, in Boulder for probably anything less than maybe $700,000, $800,000. Loveland's not that far away, okay? And so I think that's another basic consideration too here. I realize we've been having extraordinary, you know,
So the
home
hou-
price.
So the average cost of the housing, you're not satisfied with that? That typically gives you an inclination
guess
as what
I-
their cost of living is.
Well, I guess I didn't see what column is that?
It's the very last column.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I need to scroll over. Okay. So to me, it'd be of great help to kind of get some more calibration on these numbers, because I believe essentially these are the current salaries right now for these people in these communities. Is that not correct? Okay.
Yeah, and if I can be honest, this is typically the way salary compensation studies are done, because they change every year to 2 years. So and I do have the education and the longevity information that I didn't realize that you would want, so I will put that together and send it out to you. But as far as everything else, this is the actual method that is used.
Okay.
By you know, companies, people that do salary surveys.
I understand that's what you're saying. What I don't see, and I guess this is sort of the engineer in me, is I see this table, but I don't see how the work in terms of how you got to your conclusions.
Right.
Okay?
And if you look at most salary surveys, you're not going to see the work. You're going to get the results, but.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd like to see how that happens.
Okay.
As opposed to that just kind of popping up. The other thing, I guess, what I would be interested in as well, in sort of kind of fairness in terms of to the rest of our employees, is that we would use some baseline things like this and use this technique across the board,
I do, sir.
you know?
I do.
So that we can, and so I guess I'd like to see not only, I'd like to kind of see it kind of category by category. Do we have some, I mean, you said there's 2 other employees that are radically out of sync, or is that just what you've looked at?
No, the 2 other employees that I found radically out of sync were with our current compensation levels.
Mm-hmm.
And those had to be changed immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't doing another compensation study. I will tell you that I am trying to take the most egregious issues that are staring me right in the face right now
Mm-hmm.
and solve those problems.
Mm-hmm.
As I have been, as I'm to understand, there was just a study done last fall for all the rest of the positions. I can't tell you exactly, you know, where that happened, what happened with all that. I believe, Denise, can you answer that?
Yeah, it wasn't it, Mayor Pro Tem, I think November or October of 2019, there was another adjustment made to all the positions.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact
I
date.
think it was
but
October and November. It was before the new council came in. There was an
Yeah.
adjustment made across the board to all the positions at that time for their final adjustment.
And we also, I can't remember the term, but we're looking at things like certifications, and it was to disperse it across the range. So if I could say or I'm sorry, Counselor Shader, are you done?
Certainly for now.
Yeah, okay, Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Sure. As I'm hearing different interpretations than what I have of what we're trying to do tonight. And my experience was when we were looking 2 years ago to hire a city administrator, 2 and 3 years ago, the range we sent out that we were hiring against was 111 to 155. And then based on the candidate's experience and education and so on, we would up it within that range. And that was strictly for, as you said, hiring and retaining people. So we were bound by that range, but we could go up within it. So it has nothing to do with performance. It really is just to look at how, comp against other like positions. So I just hear a lot of mixing this with performance, and that is of concern to me, because that's what you have bonuses and merit pay increases for.
Well,
so if Denise were to leave tomorrow, there's no way we could hire somebody at this point for $111,000.
I would guess not. When I looked at this, and that's why the recommendation for the compensation range itself, the minimum salary I've put in there is $124,000, which is not a big difference to what the current salary is. So when we look at that, we're looking at, sure, we're going to hire someone in that probably doesn't have very much experience if we're going to get them at that rate. The goal with this compensation range is to be competitive in this market, but to still be fair and to come under the budget. Right? So I will tell you that somebody that in Loveland or Avon making $175,000, that's their mid-range. So if their mid-range is 175 and we're saying our mid-range, we want it to be around 158, we're still quite a bit lower than their higher range.
And what I also heard you say is that if it had been up to you, you would have come in today and recommended immediately retroactive to the beginning of this year, 158K, correct?
Yes.
So we're already coming in 2 years way less than what your recommendation was in reality. So I just wanted to make that.
And I think that, there are a lot of comparatives that are not visible in the studies. So I understand, Mr. Shada, that's where you go. That's what you're looking for. And I can try to give you some more information. I have it, and it has been considered, but I'll have to put it in a nice little format for you. But I think that the whole concept here is to align the City of Manitou Springs City Administrator position with what our competitors are, and to get somewhere close to that. And to be honest, I think this is a very, very accurate and fair comparison to the market.
I'm sorry, Councilor Chandler, please.
Could you pull up that slide, Judy, that has the 3 years of recommendations?
The 3-year recommendations?
Yeah.
That would be the second to last slide, Judy.
So I really do understand what Mayor Pro Tem is saying. She was the only council person here on the dais that was actually involved in the actual, solicitation of candidates and the hiring and the execution of the contracts that, Denise accepted under good faith. So I do I really am echoing what the mayor and Councilor Bremner are saying, that I am supportive of an increase to around the recommended level that you're saying that we need to get to in 2021. We will have a new council. This is an election year, so we'll have a new council in 2022. So I would just like to say that I'm willing to look at these as, you know, as recommendations for the future years, and also just knowing that we, you know, we still have that evaluation process that is part of those annual reviews. Understanding that this today isn't really about merit, it's more getting closer to a comfortable range that is in sync with other communities. So that's where I'm sitting right now, pretty much echoing what the mayor and Councilor Bremner have recommended.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. Council, any other comments or ideas here?
Mayor Graham?
Mr. Shader.
You know, to me, I'm going to trust that the HR director can kind of get me the remainder of the data, and that it's, you know, that it makes sense in terms of from that standpoint. To me, I think what I'm most comfortable with is that, and what I'd almost like to propose tonight, that we, in order to get the city administrator at least in the range, that we immediately, you know, make an increase of about 3.4% to at least get her into the range. Okay, so at least we get some movement, okay, into the range. Okay, and that would be what I would like to make as a suggestion.
Mr. Shader, you said like 3 or 4%. You're saying
3.4%.
3.4%.
That's right. And so that would essentially get her into the bottom. Is that not correct?
To the 124 or the 132?
That would get her to 124, right? And so to me, it would seem like to me that if we're dealing with at least making sure we're within the range, okay, then to me, within the range,
That's the starting of the range.
I know, that's the starting of the range. And then I believe that essentially gives council the discretion to determine, in terms of experience and all these other calibrators, in terms of where you are in the range. So at least we get, you know, an employee into the range. That would be my recommendation.
If I could make a comment, that's about 11,000, I mean, without doing the exact math of what the recommendation is today. Getting
For the
Getting
132?
to 132, is it 9?
Yeah, it's
That's
roughly
about
11,000,
around
almost 12.
$11,000 difference.
Yeah, it's actually 12,950.
Okay.
Because she's at 120.
Pulling that out of my head, okay.
And if I could also say that, given that she's at 120, when the bottom of her range was 111, that means we'd given her some credit for experience and education already. So, you know, if you use that as the basis, it really should be, I'm not good at math, but it really should be kicked up higher than 124 to get her to the same distance in that range from what she is now, from 111 or 120. Yeah, 111 to 120 was $9,000. And then we want to get her from 124 up to where she currently is in the range, which would put her at 132 actually, or 133. Right?
Well, if you started her at, if you're considering 124 for the baseline and you added 9,000, that's 133.
Right.
133.
Right.
which is more than the, well, just slightly more
I'm
than the
aware of that, but
132.
I'm just using the logic
I understand.
that
Mm-hmm.
aligns with what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
Okay, so, excuse me, I guess I didn't follow part of that. John, I understood you to be saying it was at 3.4%?
That's right.
Okay, so I got 3.4% of 120,000, $4,080, is that?
And so I believe that would get her into the bottom of the range, is what my
Oh, okay, so then that would bring it up to $124,080, okay.
And to me, it was just difficult for me to believe that that could not fit within the current budget situation, that we could affect that change, immediately.
Well, okay, now I follow your reasoning a little better, so that,
Okay.
that was helpful, okay. No, I appreciate it.
Can I ask a quick question? Are you advocating a retroactive to January 1st salary increase?
And that's what this study is essentially the time frame. Is that not right, Kelly?
Yes. I think it's a fair process. All of the staff for the city were aligned back in January 1st. That's when the increases are supposed to occur. But I think because of there's so many different situations going on that it didn't happen.
Well, then certainly I would agree with, if that's essentially the time frame, then we would calibrate it to the beginning of the year.
It seems to me like we did state that publicly at a previous meeting, that we would make it retroactive to the first of the year. Regardless of what we decided to do, it would go back to the first. Well, I think not wanting to make things more complicated, but just seeming to have a natural knack to do that. Going forward, I like the idea of putting the idea of a bonus in and tying it to goals. Now, the problem is we haven't identified goals for the city, for ourselves, or for Denise, nor, to my knowledge, has Denise brought those forward. And it's not fair for us to expect any of that, given how locked down we've been and kind of in a reactive mode against other crises. I would hope that maybe looking to our June 5th meeting, when we have a chance to talk about goals, that we'd identify some of that, and it would begin to make sense to identify what could constitute a bonus. That would sort of be my hope in terms of a rational process. That, of course, kicks the can down the road as far as coming up with a pay increase prior to that. Again, as I look at that first bump, if we talked about the first year's increase to $132,951, essentially, almost a $13,000 increase. Given the fact that this job is not one that was bumped up when the other city jobs were, and there've been a couple of bumps, so I think we take that in consideration too, and realize the city administrator's position is behind that. I could see going to the 132, basically 133,000. Pretty soon, I would like to tie it to some goals, and Denise is familiar with that. She had that put on her when she was hired, and she did an admirable job in that. And council, if you've got other ideas, I'd be delighted to hear them. Councilor Chandler?
So just to get clarity on what you're saying, Mayor, is if we were to tie any increase this year to a bonus situation, and you mentioned June, there's a $9,000 difference between $124,000 and $133,000. Am I hearing you say that that a bonus would be offered in around that range in June, after we identify, after Denise presents her goals for the rest of the year, and then we do another evaluation in December? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Actually, I think you articulated it better than I did. Yeah, it seems to me like, let's just for the sake of the idea, let's suppose we set the base at 124,000. That's similar to what Councilor Shady was proposing, and then the difference to get to 133,000 roughly, again, I'm just rough numbers, we got about $9,000. What if we took and said, here's a $9,000 bonus contingent upon meeting certain goals? Basically, if Denise met those goals in the next year, we'd have met that first, your proposed first tier bump, if you would.
So my question is, a bonus for, are we looking at 2021 because we're almost mid-year? So are we looking at providing a bonus for 2021 of the $9,000?
That would be my preference to basically adjust this, say, okay, in 20, at the end of 2021, however you want to actually write the checks out, that her base salary would have been $124,000. And if she met certain goals, yet to be defined, and I know we're all kind of uncomfortable with betting on the future when it's so foggy, that the bonus amount could be $9,000. What that does is that would get us to essentially what you proposed for the first year. And again, as I stated before, I don't want to go beyond a year's commitment, but I think that would be one way to approach the matter.
Okay, because I was just looking at, if we do that, then the next increase that's due January 2022 would then be set back, correct?
Well, yeah, the bonus would only be 1 year. I guess, what we need to do is rethink this next year. I mean, if we followed the same kind of formula, I guess we would increase the base somewhat, but we set the goals and put a bonus in there, contingent upon performance, and say go for it. Mr. Bremner.
Yeah, I'd just like to suggest that I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring her up to what the normalized compensation is across the board for Colorado. And I think this $133,000 is just the first step.
Mm-hmm.
So I would personally be in favor of just saying, okay, $133,000 for 2021, and then the goals would be for the next 2022. I think that'd be more realistic than to try to, we have our retreat coming up in the middle of the year in June, and it's, 2021's almost gone as far as goals and that kind of thing. So I think it'd be more realistic to look forward towards 2022 as far as the bonuses and that kind of thing. That's just what I mean.
No, I think that makes sense. The unfortunate, the awkward sort of thing on that is that this council would put it in place, and then a future council would evaluate, did she get to the goals? So there's always that trick, and maybe that's not a huge obstacle, but it's a concern. Councilor Chandler, please.
Just to muddy the waters a little further, here's a thought, because I do believe that an increase in our city administrator's pay is extremely important. If we were to do a 3.4% increase to $124,000, we could ask the city administrator to come with third quarter goals from June through August with a $3,000 bonus, and then fourth quarter goals through November with another $3,000 bonus. That would get us to that, tie it to goals, and then we would be doing an annual evaluation in December for the next year, before the new council is sworn in. I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
So I'm listening to a bonus versus salary. So when we give bonuses, that's wonderful. And that means that you're at that level of salary for that year. But the following year, then you're dropped back down to 124. So you haven't made any progress towards getting to that mid-level salary because we're providing that salary in a bonus form. And because it is tied to goals, it will be pensionable, which is wonderful. But and we can say, yeah, we met the 133 for 2021. But then we start 2022, we're back down to 124. So then we're still in that deficit of where we need to be.
I would be willing to modify that to salary increase and take the word bonus out of it. So a bump of $3,000 in salary with third quarter identifiable goals, and another $3,000 increase in salary with identification of fourth quarter goals, and that will get us right into the annual evaluation prior to another council coming on board. So I would imagine that the evaluation in December would include Denise knowing what her salary increase would be for 2022. I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I'm fine. I'm understanding where you're at. So we can measure those goals and we can give a pay increase based on the completion of those goals. So in January of 2022, what prompts us to give that increase? Because she can't meet any goals because she's already, you know what I mean? You're taking from July or June of 2021 to December of 2021, you're taking all of those goals and compacting them back into a 2021 salary. We're not moving forward into using those goals and objectives for 2022, which is typically when you prepare a performance review, you're saying these are your goals for next year. If you meet and accomplish those goals, then we're looking at merit increase, right? So we get to evaluate them next year.
Well, and that is exactly what I was saying, because if she were to identify some goals for the third quarter, June, July, August, with a salary increase in August, and then another increase September, October, November, another increase in her salary, then her annual review, then in her annual review, she identifies goals for 2022. So those increases in salary, although incremental, would get her to the $133,000, and then she would identify new goals, having achieved the goals that she wanted for the end of the year, and these are brand new 2022 goals. So I see where you're coming from, but that's kind of where I was.
Yeah, I think there's just that gap, though, of the increase for this year should be in 2021, and the increase for 2022 should happen in January, when everyone else's increases happen.
Get that. So by November, she would be at $133,000.
That should be the 2021 salary, not 2022.
Okay.
So
I see where you're coming from.
So I'm saying that there's really no way for her to meet goals between November and December to get to that January increase where we should be for that performance evaluation.
I get what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have make a comment?
Mayor Pro Tem?
This conversation, again, I just think is so far away from what it should be about, and that is the range that a city administrator would get. Take the individual completely out of it. The range, right now, a city administrator with a limited experience and education would in all likelihood right now in our city be making $158,000. And we're trying to tie it to goals and bonuses, and that has nothing to do with what the range is. So I'm very concerned that we are talking apples and oranges here. So I would like to make a motion that for this year, for 2021, we increase the city administrator's salary to $132,950.66 and we can make it retroactive back to 2020 to January 1st. And I'll go along with discussing the 2022 at jump in November when we come back to the budget. But to me, it should be $158,000 right now, today. So that is my motion, and there you have it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And just for clarity, I would ask Mayor Pro Tem to restate her motion again before we vote.
Yes, I move that we increase our city administrator's salary in 2021, retroactive to January 1st, to $132,950.66.
Okay, thank you. So we have the motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? No?
I did want to just appreciate that Nancy said that we would discuss. In the first motion, you had said there'd be additional discussion, and I don't know if that's important.
Yeah, and thank you that we would revisit the jump to 145,900 in for 2022 at our November budget time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, any further comments? Okay, we have motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We have, all opposed, say nay. Right. So we have 4-2, motion passes 4-2. Okay, thank you all. All right. That brings us to council correspondence. Does anyone have anything? Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring up something. I know that Denise is aware of it. I know Jeff Jones is aware of it, but I've had a couple of calls about this striping on Ruxton Avenue, and people are, I know Denise has probably had more complaints than I have, but I think it was sort of a fiasco. It took too long to do the striping, and they striped yesterday, and the rain came and it ran down into the creek, and they had the parking all blocked off since last Thursday, and then they had it all weekend long where they didn't do any work, and a lot of people are disappointed. I need to bring that up because I told a couple of people that brought it up to me that I bring it up in city council. So that's all I've got on that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Natalie?
I have a quick question. I don't know whom I'm liaison to.
I'm sorry?
I don't know who I'm the liaison to. I took over for Susan for the Ward 1, and I don't know, I haven't been assigned anyone yet, so I don't know what that process looks like.
Okay, we need to find some harder jobs to assign you to. Okay, so we'll take an action and sort that out here in the coming weeks. So would that be okay? We don't have to do it tonight. I don't think. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I've got several things. First off, next week is the fourth Tuesday. We sometimes have work sessions, sometimes we don't. Next week we will not be having a work session, so we're off. That's the Tuesday before Memorial Day weekend, so I think we all probably find something else to occupy our time with. Another question I had is, this is a follow-up from the joint meeting we had with the Planning Commission several weeks ago to discuss the zoning rewrite. The idea has kind of been floating around to take that fourth Tuesday when we may or may not have a work session, but make that a dedicated work session, a joint session with the Planning Commission, and just focus on the zoning code rewrite, because that's such a huge chunk of work. So if you could think about that and see if you feel that's a good idea. We don't need an answer tonight. We're sort of entertaining that, kicking that idea around.
Mayor, could you repeat that date?
I'm sorry. Okay, so what this would be to take the fourth Tuesday of every month for the rest of the year, and we would have that as a work session, but it would be dedicated to a joint session with the Planning Commission, and we would just focus on the zoning code rewrite.
So beginning June 22nd.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be, and I think there was significant interest in council members to spend a little more time on that and to really go through and work on it in detail. And then one thing I will mention, this week, or last week, at the PPACG and PPRTA meetings. In both cases, those boards passed letters calling for keeping El Paso County as wholly within one congressional district. So there's some redistricting being considered, and both organizations ask that the redistricting commissioners keep El Paso County wholly within one congressional district to the greatest extent possible. We Manitou Springs has subsequently been asked to consider, preparing a letter of similar support for that idea. So I guess I would ask council if you would like to have that as a discussion item on a future agenda. Conceivably, we could just, if you all felt it was appropriate, we could go ahead and send a letter without a whole lot of discussion. I could send a sample out tomorrow, email it to you, and you could look it over if you'd like. This not being an agenda item, I don't want to make a huge discussion out of it, but if you want to give me some direction, I'd be happy to hear it. I guess we'll entertain it in the future then. That's all I've got. Okay, so if we could do the city administrator's report.
I just have a couple. I sent it out to all of you today that we do have another time for vaccines. It's June 10th in Memorial Park. So the last time we did it here, we had 50, and then the school had about 90, I believe. So we got 140 people vaccinated last week. So we do have another date for that. Ours here in Memorial Hall was one of the more successful ones that they've done. So kudos out to Megan and her group. And then Kevin said that he did do a site visit with Parking Logics, and that it will be fully configured and installed here in the very near future. So wanted to share that.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item K, executive session. So I'll go ahead and read that, and I'll ask for a motion to go into executive session. An executive session concerning a potential land swap of public property and private property pursuant to Section 5.1D of the Manitou Springs Home Rule Charter to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators. Do I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
A motion, second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, so we'll need to exit this Zoom session, and on the email that that Judy sent out earlier, there's a link for the executive session. I would say it's 9:18 now. Why don't we come back at 9:30 and we'll get started on the executive session. Thank you.
I need you to send it to Michelle, the link.